Hello everyone. I'm so happy to welcome you to Canada Infinite's webinar. We have professionals from all around the world joining us today. We have people from Algeria, Nigeria, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, UAE, El Salvador, Morocco, and many other countries. The topic for today's webinar is Career Pathways in Canada for Supply Chain and Logistics Industry. Before we get started, a few webinar housekeeping guidelines for you. This webinar is being recorded. It's approximately going to be about an hour. All participant lines are muted. The Q&A session is at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to type your questions in the questions window, and either we are responding to you live, or we'll collect the questions and respond to it at the end of the session. You will receive a recording of this webinar through your employment specialist, and it will be posted on our Canada Infinite blog soon. And please take time to complete the post-webinar survey in the end. Email will also be sent as a follow-up. So everybody on this call mostly is aware of what Canada Infinite is, but I just want to go over it one more time. Canada Infinite is a free national 8-week program delivered by JVS Toronto with other industry partners. We've served over 4,000 English and French-speaking immigrating professionals since 2016. The dedicated employment specialists from the program support professionals arriving in the next 12 months with employment services such as employment preparation and job search tools. They offer a connection to a Canadian mentor, industry-specific and province-specific mentor. We help you with your resume and cover letter for Canada. Program provides you with components that gives you information about Canadian workplace culture in specific, and employer webinars like the one that you're attending right now. We also offer an online job matching platform called Magnet, through which you can have access to job postings. And very soon we are going to launch online training sessions for soft skills like customer service and business writing. Watch out for information on this by your employment specialist soon. Just wanted to share a recent success story. This is Parissa. She was a telecommunication engineer from Iran. She connected with us pre-arrival, received all the support from the employment specialist services like Canadian resume and cover letter, customizing the resume, how to do online networking, and many other services. And she was also connected to a mentor in her field through the program. And the mentor continued this support, provided industry-specific tips, helped her with how to target companies, which companies to target, how to do the cover letter, or specific tips to the industry. And Parissa used all of this information. She was very proactive. She was open to all of this information and implemented them. She applied for jobs even before she arrived and received a job offer in Canada. So this is just to illustrate how, when you're proactive and participate actively in the program and implement some of the strategies that you come up with your employment specialists, it can actually get you results. What are Canadian professional associations? In Canada, professional associations play an important role as information sharing, best practices, and networking bodies. By joining your professional association, you begin to assume your responsibilities as a professional. You basically share a brand with other professionals. By becoming a member of a professional association, you are making a career choice. You're accelerating your learning. You have access to hidden job market. If you have gone through a few of components of the program, you understand the concept of hidden job market. Hidden job in Canada, a huge percentage of the jobs are actually not posted online. You can get access to this only through networking and through your connections. So the best way of connecting and networking with others who share the same passion and become a member of your community, right? So this is one way, one reason why you would connect to a professional association. But these are all guidelines for networking. We never in the program say this is the only way, only path that you have to follow. Do your research, see if this makes sense to you. Is it relevant for your journey? Each individual journey is different. Just see if a membership is of value to you, and then make that decision. There are all kinds of professional associations. There are provincial ones, there are national ones, and here are some examples. And today we have with us CITT, which is a national association for supply chain and logistics industry. And you can also find a list of various associations on the charityvillage.com website. And you can always reach out to your employment specialist if you want to discuss this further, and they'll be able to provide you information. What are Canadian professional designations? Professional designations are often considered proof of credibility. Sorry, I just clicked on something in print wrong. Sorry, I'm back. Professional designations are often considered proof of credibility, especially during the job application and hiring process. It's not mandatory, but gives you specialized knowledge and may give you an edge over competition while applying for jobs. Shows employers and clients that you are dedicated to your profession. Most programs require a combination of self-study, work experience, and examinations, allowing you to work full-time. Professional designation is different from professional licensure. Under the licensure system, provincial regulatory bodies define the tasks and functions of practice of a profession and provide that these tasks may be legally performed only by those who are licensed. For example, mechanical engineering or chemical engineering will require licensure for you to perform as in those job functions. Please note that today we are not talking about licensing bodies. With that, I would like to introduce our wonderful panelists for the webinar today. Chrissy Aitchison is the Director of Marketing and Strategic Initiatives at CITT, a professional association that trains, certifies, and provides networking and other career development supports for Canadian logistics professionals. Chrissy has been with CITT for over 13 years, serving in various roles with a focus on marketing, communications, and educational product management. Over the years, she has seen many new Canadians include CITT and the CCLP designation, about which she is going to give us more information today, as part of their strategy to build a successful supply chain career here in Canada. She's always happy to advise individuals on how to get the most professional value from their affiliation with CITT. And our other panelist today is Valerie Kucherenko. He's experienced at different levels of maritime transportation and supply chain industry, specialist with broadband knowledge gained in leading Fortune 150 and CPG companies. He has 15 years of diversified experience with record of accomplishment in designing new strategies and driving change initiatives. Valerie has completed 4 international assignments in the US, Spain, Italy, Russia, and Canada, and has strong knowledge of local markets in North America, Europe, and Russia, holding various positions in all 3 regions. Valerie is a multinationally experienced professional and specialized MISE, MES, International Shipping Education background gathered in Copenhagen, Denmark. His latest position is with Canadian Pacific Railway, where Valerie is involved in marketing and pricing for international container shipping lines. I'm happy to inform you that Valerie is also a valued mentor with our program and has mentored several immigrating professionals. He was recently awarded by JVS Toronto for his dedication to ongoing support of new immigrants. It's my great pleasure to welcome Chrissy and Valerie today. Chrissy, would you like to take over?
That sounds great. Thank you so much for the introduction and for the invitation to be here today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well then, let's jump right in. I am very excited to be here today to offer some advice and some information to those of you who are coming to Canada considering a career in supply chain here. To get started, let's talk a little bit about the supply chain sector here in Canada. Supply chain has been identified as one of the fastest growing industries in Canada. Canada is a country of natural resources, and the extraction, trade, and distribution of these resources form a huge part of our economy. All of these activities require supply chain functions. Canada is also a geographically large nation with a comparatively small, spread out population. So the movement, storage, and tracking of products from coast to coast also requires significant supply chain activities. I don't think I have control of the slides, so can someone please advance?
See you do. Do you want to try one more time?
Sure, let me give that a try. Doesn't seem to be working.
Okay, I can advance it, no worries.
Okay, I'll let you know when we're ready to go. All right, so national and provincial labour market studies have put the size of Canada's supply chain workforce at over 800,000 people. And that's not even including truck drivers. Once you take truck drivers into account, the combined workforce is over 1 million in supply chain. This is a growing sector with forecasts suggesting continual addition of new jobs and an inability to fill these jobs with the existing domestic labour market. New Canadians seeking careers in supply chain will be critical to Canada's ability to meet these workforce needs. And for new Canadians, especially those who are already bringing some supply chain experience, there are lots of opportunities to build a successful career in the Canadian supply chain sector. Next slide, please. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with supply chain roles, the supply chain sector includes all the activities that take place to get a product to its intended market. So this includes planning and forecasting, purchasing and movement of raw materials, product assembly, moving, storing, and keeping track of a product as it flows towards consumers. There are supply chain functions in virtually all sectors of the Canadian economy. Today, we're mostly going to be talking about the last two on this list here, materials inventory management and logistics and transportation. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just a few examples of the roles in supply chain that were determined by the government of British Columbia to be the top 10 key supply chain occupations in their province. As you can see, many of these are at the managerial level, but there are supply chain logistics roles at all levels of seniority and in a variety of different functions. So one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about today is the difference between a certificate and a certification. Generally speaking, a certificate is given in recognition of the successful completion of a course or program. They're considered proof of knowledge at the time that they were earned. On the other hand, certifications are given to indicate current knowledge, as holders of certifications are required to engage in continuing education and to periodically renew those certifications. Another difference is that certificates are often open to industry newcomers as well as current professionals. There are certificates you can earn as a first step towards mastering a topic or profession, whereas certification usually requires a combination of both education and practical experience. So in order to hold a designation, a certification, you generally have to have at least some experience already working in an industry. Next slide, please. So professional designations. We did talk about this at the front end of the presentation a little bit. I will just recap quickly. Professional designations are a form of certification rather than certificate. They tend to be granted by industry through professional associations rather than academic institutions like colleges or universities. And as a result, they have a professional focus requiring that combination of practical work experience in the subject area as well as academic understanding. Unlike academic credentials, designations do need to be maintained. This usually involves a combination of providing proof of continuing learning year after year, adherence to professional standards and ethical conduct, and generally a fee to maintain the license to use the credential. So some examples of common professional designations in Canada would be CPA, which is Chartered Professional Accountant, CHRP, which is Certified Human Resources Professional, and Project Management Professional, PMP, which you may have noticed is one of the designations that Valerie holds. So here are some of the main reasons why professionals in Canada choose to earn and hold professional designations. I mean, the big one is credibility. As was mentioned before as well, designations show that you meet an industry-recognized standard and also that you're committed to a specific profession and to ongoing development within that profession. They can also give you a competitive edge. In an industry where designations are not required to practice, you can leverage a designation to be your competitive differentiator in the job market. Another reason, of course, is better pay. Industry salary surveys show that on average, certified professionals in supply chain logistics have higher salaries than their uncertified peers. And just in general, professional designations can help support better career outcomes. There's both increased opportunity for advancement and more job security for those who earn, maintain, and know how to maximize the benefits of having a professional designation. So just circling back to what professional associations do, of course, professional associations do a lot in addition to granting certifications. They often offer both training leading towards certification, as well as other professional development offerings like educational webinars, seminars, courses, and events. Associations also advocate for and promote their professional members and the interests of the industry they serve, offer networking and business development opportunities for members and companies, and other perks like job search tools, newsletters, and similar informational offerings. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about CITT, the specific professional association that I'm speaking on behalf of today. CITT is a national not-for-profit professional association supporting the logistics, transportation, and distribution sector here in Canada. We've been certifying and supporting career-long learning and career path development for Canadian logistics professionals for over 60 years. Our members work on both the service provider and service user side of supply chain logistics. So on the service provider side, we have professionals working for trucking, rail, marine, air cargo, and pipeline carriers, as well as companies offering warehousing and distribution services and third-party logistics providers. We also have about half of our membership working on the service user side. So those are people who work in supply chain roles and functions in other industries. Those who work in the supply chain sector in Canada tend to refer to these as shipper side companies. So we have members working in shipper side companies in nearly every sector, such as manufacturing, retail, and natural resources, just to name a few. One of the most immediately valuable things that CITT can offer for new Canadians is the opportunity to start building and growing your Canadian professional network. By attending events hosted by CITT's national office or our local area councils, which are member-run groups that host events across the country, you can start to build that network and get to know people already working in the industry here in Canada. These local area councils are member-run groups that host professional, educational, and networking events. And these groups exist in Toronto, in Quebec, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. And the Toronto Council is very active with events almost every month, ranging from educational events to social and networking events. In the next slide, you're just going to see a handful of photos of some of the events that the Toronto Area Council has been involved in on the left side of the screen. They have seminars, they often do Excel training, they do site tours of relevant supply chain and logistics companies. In the past year, one of the really exciting ones they did was they did a tour of the Amazon distribution facility in the GTA. They also get together and do fundraising and work for charity, and they also have social events, which are, of course, networking focused. To the right side of the screen, you'll also see some images from our big national conference, which happens every year in the fall, and that's another big opportunity to network with supply chain logistics professionals from across the entire country. And that conference moves around. This year it's going to be in Niagara Falls, but it moves from east to west so that it covers all regions. One thing I will mention is the events that are hosted by our Toronto Area Council tend to be very affordable for individuals to participate in. Tickets often range from $10 to $30 in price, so it's a small investment to come out and really get to know people working in the local industry. Next slide, please. So CITT's primary offering is the CCLP professional designation, which stands for CITT Certified Logistics Professional. CITT's designation is the original professional designation for logistics in Canada and is the most widely held transportation and distribution-focused logistics designation here. Earning the designation can help you learn how the business of logistics operates in Canada, including relevant laws and regulations, geographical considerations, as well as more universal principles of the discipline. It can help you establish yourself as a Canadian supply chain logistics professional, build your professional network, and gain access to those hidden job opportunities that may never make it to regular job posting boards and hiring processes. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, this is the right one. Oh, no, yeah, sorry, actually, next slide, please. I'm not sure if we're frozen or if it's just. All right, well, this pretty much takes us to the end of the next slide, and then the next piece of the presentation is actually where Valerie is going to tell you a little bit about his experience. I'm not sure if the slideshow is frozen or if we potentially, if maybe I've lost my connection to the live slides. Val, do you want to? Oh, yeah, it looks like the slide is frozen. Well, Val, do you want to share a little bit about your experience, and hopefully we'll be able to get the slideshow moving again soon?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chrissy, for the introduction, and it was a wonderful presentation. And to everyone here on the call, my name is Val. I mean, that's how people here refer to me in Canada. And 4 years ago, I was exactly in the same position as you are today. I was getting ready to move to the absolutely new country called Canada, and I had my own assumptions, my expectations, and my fears, like anybody else, because I was moving to Canada from Russia with my family. So 4 of us were getting ready to move to absolutely unknown territory. So I can absolutely relate to you today and understand what kind of, oh, here we go, we got a slide here. So I can absolutely understand your situation and your kind of way of thought of moving to the new country. So the whole presentation in my part is more of an example of what I've done, so I can share that information with you so you can use that and move into the new country with more confidence and maybe do some extra steps to do that in more of a enjoyable process for you. So if you look at that slide, you can see my lifespan for the last 4 years. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. So before landing here in Canada in 2015, I realized that Canada is very much about networking and establishing yourself here in the new country as a professional. So my journey actually started way before the actual landing in Canada, as I learned from the industry experts that networking is a big part of success in Canada. So what I mean is that you have to be proactive, you have to reach out, You have to be open-minded. You have to establish yourself here from the scratch. What that means is that all the luggage and the baggage of experience that you have from your previous country has to be a little bit left behind, in the sense of you have to kind of open yourself to the new environment and establish yourself from the very beginning. So as an example, as a preparation to my arrival to the country, I updated my resume to meet Canadian standards. I started reaching out to my new contacts in industry in Canada, specifically in transportation and supply chain. I use platforms well known to anyone, which is LinkedIn, Facebook, and online postings. And I mobilized my online network. Essentially what I did, I posted a couple of articles and information about the fact that I'm moving to Canada, so everyone was aware. And I was, frankly speaking, overwhelmed with a lot of feedback and support from my immediate community, who were helping me out, who were cheering me, who were actually supporting me on the blue days, because moving to the new country is some sort of a roller coaster. One day you feel like totally excited and you ready to go and rock and roll. Next day something goes wrong, or somebody doesn't reply to your email, and you feel some kind of blue moment in your life. So you need that support, and that's absolutely natural. Believe me, I've done it myself, and that wasn't an easy ride. It was like American roller coaster, up and down, and you never know what's going to be the next day. So essentially, when I reached to my contacts on social platforms and I let them know, that helped me a lot. And I realized that later on in my immigration process, when I was specifically looking for a first position here in Canada, but I will talk a little bit about that later on the next slide. So statistically, just a little bit of numbers for you. It takes 3 to 12 months for the new immigrant to land the first job. But that's quite a lot of time, right? And in my case, it took me 3 months to actually land a job here in Canada. But if we take into consideration the fact that I started looking for the job through the online and social platforms, which took around 6 months prior to that, if we combine this time, it took me like almost 9 months from the moment I started back in Russia till the moment I landed the first job here in Canada. It took 9 months altogether. So this is just my example, a real lifetime example for you. And the first job was with C.H. Robinson, as you can see it here on the timeline, when I was given an opportunity to become a sales executive for C.H. Robinson Global Forwarding here in Toronto. That's actually where I'm based today. Essentially, the next step was, what am I going to do here in Canada? How am I going to establish myself? And I had numerous calls and conversations with the professionals from the industry. And after conversations, I realized that I will stick with CITT, which is a Canadian organization that allows people to establish themselves as supply chain professionals. And it took me a little bit more than a year before I started. And in 2017, I actually was enrolled in the program. And it took me almost a year to complete all the courses and get my certification. But the interesting thing happened along the way is that when I was completing my certification through my network of the new professionals, I landed a job at the Canadian Pacific Railway, which I'm with at this point of time. So looking back at my decision to join CITT, what was the main reason why? And there were the two main factors that I can crystallize. First of all, CITT is a well-known and respected in Canada because it is a Canadian organization. The second point, and that was probably as important as the fact that CITT is Canadian, is that CITT allows for online courses, so you can do it online at the time when you have a couple of hours a day to do it from home, from the office, on the way back. And at the same time, it allows you to build a network of so much needed professionals from the industry, because the people on the program usually, as Chrissy mentioned, they either from a service side or from a customer side. either way, you meet the people who are dedicated, they want to learn more and prosper more in the supply chain industry, which is kind of, the top of the top when you're looking for the networking. So these were the two crucial reasons why I decided to stick with CITT. But just as an example, you can start the program way before you move to Canada as a preparation. It is totally up to you. So looking at that timeline, this is just an example of what happened to me over the last 4 years, from the moment I decided to move to Canada till pretty much today, when I'm giving back to the community and helping the new immigrants come into Canada. So with that, I would like to move to the next slide. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that my own experience of uncovering Canada, as I was 4 years ago learning a lot from the online chats and platforms and discussions with the people that were exactly in the same situation. They were getting ready to move to the new country. So there are certain myths among migrant community, and some of those myths are a little bit naive. And they look like the new country will open up the arms and welcome newcomers with the bread and salt, including new positions to everyone who comes here. Well, as Chrissy mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities in the supply chain, but you have to be ready to open yourself to the new opportunities. It's not like, the country will welcome you and open up the list and will send the email with with the positions available. You have to root for that. You have to help yourself. So first of all, newcomers have to realize that Canada has its own rules related to job finding process, which can be summarized as a 3 points. And I learned that from my own experience. So first rule is be specific and to the point. The reason for that is competition with our neighbor US sharpened Canadians to be extremely good at certain roles and professions. So if you're an accountant, you have to be extremely good at accounting. You have to know it inside out. If you're a supply chain professional, you have to be a supply chain professional, understand the language, understand the landscape, understand how it works in Canada. Because the employers, they prefer professionals in specific areas as opposed to generalists, which I was a little bit naive, assuming that I will apply all my knowledge and experience from different positions and I will be extremely successful just on the back of that. Well, I had to a little bit convert myself and downsize to the specific positions that I was targeting at that time. So that's rule number 1, be specific. The rule number 2, be proactive and connect with the community at the early stage. As an example of my own, I started doing that through Facebook and LinkedIn, reaching out to people with a simple message. I am moving to Canada. I am moving to new positions. If there's something that you're aware of or you learn about, please let me know, and I will be extremely grateful to you for that. And that helped me to kind of get the ball rolling. And I actually attended, as the next step, I attended professional events, and one of those events was actually an annual event in Mississauga, which is close to Toronto, that was hosted by CITT at that time. If I'm not mistaken, it was October, and that helped me to connect with my first employer, C.H. Robinson, because there was a huge delegation from C.H. Robinson attending CITT event at that time. So this is just an example how a simple decision to attend the event helped me to land the first position. So rule number 2, be proactive. The rule number 3, be open-minded. So what it means, you have to be open-minded to new connections and initiatives. And you have to be reaching out to the community. The simple things might be like reaching out to, professionals on LinkedIn and asking them for informational interviews, such as grabbing a coffee in Tim Hortons, but that you will learn it is some sort of network in Canada that allows people to meet over a cup of coffee and just have 15 minutes a conversation. What's going on in your company? Are you planning on new hirings? Are you working on new projects that I can help you out with? You might be just overwhelmed with the information that people will give you. Sometimes you will be rejected, and that is part of the process, so be ready for that. But as long as you're open-minded, you do not have some certain expectations, but just do it out of desire to achieve the goal, I'm sure you will succeed, because I'm a life example of how that happened to me over the course of 4 years. So the 3 rules: be specific, be proactive, and be open-minded. And personally, I attended a lot of workshops, and that helped me to shape my understanding of the Canadian supply chain network and the reality. Because there's one thing you can learn from Google and online information, and it's totally different level of information and a level of detail that you can learn from a 5-10 minute conversation with a professional who works for a company like Amazon or Walmart or Maersk Line or Kuehne+Nagel or DHL, you name it, right? And the opportunity to meet with those people is one of those initiatives that you have to do yourself. You have to reach out. And as Chris mentioned, look out for events that organized by organizations like Infonet or like CITT. You will see that there is plenty in every region across the country. So that is on how to leverage the association offerings for your job search. And if you have any questions later on, you can ask them. But now I would like to move to the next slide, which is the last for me. So this is essentially just a summary of what I've tried to deliver to you as a message today. So if you look at the tip number 1 and number 2, be prepared and be open-minded. Essentially what it means, start your job hunting process or landing your new position way before you move to Canada. Because when you're in Canada, you have to be, so to say, boots on the ground, right? You have to have a certain plan, you have to have certain connections, you have to have certain meetings or events that you would like to attend to, because you will be overwhelmed with the number of decisions that you will have to make, from renting an apartment to arranging for the documents, getting your driver's license, and so on and so forth. So before you move to Canada, help yourself by getting ready, by getting into the mood, by helping yourself by doing this homework of reaching out to the community and establishing your plan. Like in myself, I did a written plan. It was just 2-pager that helped me to kind of rationalize the step that I will be taking upon arrival into Canada. And be open-minded. Believe me, there will be good days and the bad days, in the sense of, you will be successful one day reaching the person, next day you will be rejected, and you will be receiving no feedback. That's part of the process. That's okay, as long as you understand where your goal is. The tip number 3 and 4, don't be afraid to ask. Canada is very friendly if you ask. Like, reach out to people and you will see that some of them will say, yeah, sure, let's grab a coffee, next week and have a chat. It might be like 5-10 minutes for the person going to, to work. But if they, good enough, they will share some information. You can use that for your own, benefits. And as you become, more and more established here in Canada, which I'm sure you will, give back. Don't forget that there are people that are kind of, in the same situation that you were like 2, 3, 1 year ago. That will help you to kind of fulfill your ambitions. Tip number 5 and 6, be realistic. Like I gave, the timeline that for average immigrant, it takes 3 to 12 months to land a job. So keep it in mind. Don't expect that you will land a job next day when you arrive to Canada. It's just unrealistic, and it will put you on the kind of, blue mode. Don't do it. Help yourself. Establish realistic goals. And be committed. Like in my case, the commitment meant that I will be looking for a position in supply chain transportation, because I knew that's where I'm good at, that's where my background is. So I just kept on, pounding the pavement, and essentially it helped me to achieve the goal and the first position, because that's the most crucial one. So tip number 7 and 8. Build your network on information, not status. What it means is that if you have to downgrade yourself, if you were a director and you have to take a lesser position, be ready for that. But building your assumptions in your decisions on the information. Like if you have to take a couple of steps back, so you can take a position, then grow within the 2-3 years. Make that make that decision, and base your strategy and your tactics on the information available. Do not set unrealistic goals based on your assumptions. Canada is a slightly different country from what you've probably experienced in the past. So just be realistic and say thank you. Believe me, that goes a long way. Like what I've done, it was, after pretty much every meeting, be it big or small, I was sending the postcard, handwritten postcard to the person that, dedicated 10, 15, half an hour of their time to help me out. And that went a long way because people were appreciative of the fact that I was thanking them for the time that they dedicated to meeting with me, absolutely new person to the country. So if you embrace those rules, I can assure you that you will achieve more than if you were setting unrealistic goals and acting based on the assumptions. Be realistic, use the information that you get in your hands as you talk to people. And whenever you feel down, and believe me, there will be days like that, recall the reason for your move, which is pursue success and achieve personal goal in the new country. And believe me, that will help you to keep on driving. Thank you. That's it of my presentation for today.
Great. Thank you so much, Valerie. Chrissy, I think you would like to continue.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Valerie. I think that you can speak so much more personally about this than I can, and I think that's going to be really valuable to this audience. Up next, I was going to talk a little bit now about the CCLP designation. If you're interested in earning it, I'll just give you a very little bit of information on how you can do that. But I do think, as Val mentioned when he talked about his journey, for a lot of you coming to Canada, getting involved in the CITT community by attending networking events is probably a really good first step. Because it's certainly much less of a financial investment, and it's a great way to start building those professional relationships and your network to help accelerate your career here quickly. Depending on where you are when you come in, you may also want to immediately begin working towards the CCLP designation like Val did, so I'm going to explain how you would do that. And I'm just going to touch on this very briefly because I'm not sure how relevant it will be to most of you. So please do feel free to contact me directly after the presentation if you have any follow-up questions or if you'd like any more information. Next slide, please. So the vast majority of professionals who earn the CCLP designation do so by taking CITT's program of online courses. If you successfully complete these courses, you do not need to take any additional examinations in order to become a CITT certified logistics professional. And these courses were designed for busy working professionals so they can be completed during evenings and weekends around your full or part-time job and all the other responsibilities in your life. Next slide, please. So as far as the courses go, every CITT certified logistics professional who completes the program of study to earn the designation completes CITT's suite of 5 specialized logistics courses. This is what guarantees a national standard of understanding and gives professionals knowledge that is portable throughout their career progression. The foundational courses in particular have a very Canadian focus and will help you quickly catch up on what is unique or different for logistics professionals working here in Canada. There's also a general business academic requirement, which you can meet by taking 5 courses that CITT offers in partnership with the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. Or for these courses, we will also be very happy to receive an application to recognize your previous learning and any credits granted. So you don't have to repeat any learning on standard subjects like finance, economics, management, or strategy, just as a few examples. Finally, in order to earn the CCLP designation, you do need to have at least 3 years of experience working in a supply chain logistics role. But CITT absolutely does not require that work experience have happened in Canada. So if you were already working in logistics before immigrating to Canada, your international experience absolutely counts towards this requirement. You can also accrue work experience during or after taking the courses. So if you don't have any experience in supply chain logistics or less than 3 years, you could still get started on the courses right away. Next slide, please. So that's all the information I'm going to provide on that today. But as I said, if you're interested in pursuing the designation and you'd like any more information, please do contact me directly and I'd be happy to help. And also let me know if you'd like to be added to CITT's email list, because then you'll receive invitations to the events that I mentioned before, as well as notifications and reminders about upcoming semester course start dates and other professional development opportunities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chrissy and Valerie. This was very good information. There's a lot we understood about the industry and about the certification and about CITT today. We are getting a lot of questions, so it'll be great if we do a quick Q&A session now. I think we have several supply chain professionals here and also some who want to know how to get started in supply chain in Canada. If there's any advice that you can give. Chrissy, would you like to start?
Sure. I'll start, and then Val will probably have something to add as well. I mean, I would say if you're someone who already has experience in supply chain that you're bringing with you to Canada, then I think Val's example of his career progression is kind of exactly what I would recommend. Start by using LinkedIn before you even come to Canada to start building that network and building those connections. And then once you're here, start attending events, start getting embedded in the local community and building your network. And then, when you feel like you're ready, I think taking our courses towards the designation is a great way to start building Canadian-specific knowledge in the industry that will really help you to do well here.
Great. Val, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
How advise on how someone can get their career started in supply chain and logistics?
I mean, if you're brand new to the industry and the country at the same time, it might be a little bit of a challenge because, you will have to establish yourself as a professional and as a citizen and, in a new country, which is kind of double challenge, so to say. But if you decide to take on that journey, I would strongly recommend to consider one of the certifications. And CITT probably would be one of the most respected in Canada and well known, because as I learned, as I was screening through a lot of job openings, quite often CCLP designation is listed as one of the requirements for preferences for by the employers. So if you want to establish, you have to take on the journey to learning, logistics and supply chain to kind of land the first, for your first position in Canada, because being generalist in Canada, not always preferential, as I mentioned in my presentation. So as a suggestion, if you really want to take this path, and if you don't have a previous experience in supply chain, establish yourself as a professional by getting a theoretical education and enroll into one of the programs. That will definitely help.
That's a really good point, actually. For people who don't have supply chain logistics experience yet, there are certainly entry-level jobs available in the industry across Canada, but while you're establishing yourself as a Canadian as well as a supply chain professional, you could probably help advance and accelerate that, especially CITT's foundational level courses. We have one called Transportation Systems and one called Logistics Processes. And between the two, you do get a really good, broad, and fairly deep overview of how the entire supply chain logistics, transportation, and distribution piece of the sector works in Canada. So that can be pretty helpful.
Okay, great. And maybe this is for Chrissy. What aspects of maybe the courses or overall achieving certification can be done pre-arrival? Like, what are the kind of documentation they can, if someone is interested in this CCLP designation, what are the things that they can prepare pre-arrival?
For sure. I mean, first of all, I would say we very deliberately offer all of our courses online and in what's known as an asynchronous format, which means they're not bound to specific time zones. So There are some interactive elements to our courses where, for example, you need to participate in a group discussion, but rather than saying this group discussion is going to happen at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, we say this group discussion is going to happen over the course of 2 weeks. So please, during those 2 weeks, log on regularly and participate. And that's specifically so we can accommodate people in all the time zones across Canada. And also we, every semester, have at least some international learners who join us. So you could certainly start taking our courses as early as our next semester starts at the very beginning of September. So that is certainly an option. And also, if you already have that general business education, for example, if you have a college or university degree or diploma in commerce, business management, if you have an MBA or any of those types of credentials, you could begin the process to apply for credit against the 5 general business courses so that you already have those 5 credits towards the designation recorded in your profile before you even come here. So those are 2 things I would say you can get started with right away. And if you want to connect with me directly and sort of we can talk through your personal educational background to see if you would qualify for that advanced standing, I'd be happy to help you figure that out as well.
Awesome. Another question is about the sector itself. Are there any specific provinces that are better in terms of available opportunities in supply chain and logistics?
So I'll start on that. And what we've been seeing is that it's definitely a growth industry in Alberta. They've identified it as a huge hub. And British Columbia as well is one of the provinces that's identified it as one of their fastest growing sectors. And also, I would say Ontario for sure. I mean, most of the head offices of businesses in the country are based in Ontario, generally speaking. And so we have huge population density here, and there's a lot that happens both in the sort of managerial side of supply chain and logistics, but also in all of the sort of roles that trickle down into the actual execution.
Great. Another question is about salaries. People want to know what is an average salary in supply chain.
Unfortunately, I don't have that information at my fingertips. There is an industry salary survey that gets published every year in a Canadian trade publication called Canadian Shipper, and its sister publication, which is called Inside Logistics. So what I could do is I could grab that information after the presentation and pass it along to the team at JVS. And then if you guys could maybe pass that along to either anyone who asked the question or just attendees in general.
Yeah, we'll pass it on to the attendees for sure. Thank you so much for that, Chrissy. And which are the top organizations that normally sort of hire in supply chain? A few organizations, if you can.
Well, I can answer that question just from my experience. If you look into the supply chain industry in Canada, it obviously presented with the major players, like pretty much in any other country. If you look into the 3PL providers, which is essentially service companies, the top ones would be definitely the well-known brands like Kuehne+Nagel, DHL, Panalpina. If you're looking at the retail side, obviously the big names like Walmart, Amazon would be the contenders. Obviously, on the Canadian side, there's a huge retail company called Loblaws. They own a lot of retail points here in Canada, and that would be considered one of the top. And obviously, Canadian Tire is a big player in the supply chain because they pretty much control the entire supply chain for their retail network. And obviously, all the well-known brands in retail like Home Depot, Best Buy, you will see those names as you come to Canada if you start researching. On the shipping side, the major shipping lines are presented here in Canada, obviously, such as Maersk Line, MSC, Costco, CMA, CGM. Like people from the industry, I'm sure you recognize those names, and I can tell you those are the major employers. Without going into specifics and niches, like the There are local players in in the supporting functions, and there's a lot of trucking companies, because trucking industry is per se the biggest in Canada when it comes to transportation, because the major trader of Canada is actually, not a lot of people know, but it's not China, it's actually US. So the biggest trade between Canada is with US, not with China. And obviously a lot of goods are moved between Canada and US, either by road, essentially in a truck, or by railroad and rail cars. So these would be like its top employers too, like trucking companies, and obviously two major railway companies in Canada, CP Rail and Canadian National.
Yeah, surface transportation is huge in Canada. Certainly, we are a very large country from coast to coast, and a lot of things need to move where there just aren't waterways available. So, a lot of trucking and a lot of rail, and then on the coasts, marine becomes a huge thing in the ports, and then, as Val mentioned, like anything to do with retail or grocery is huge, because again, that large country with the spread out population, and also anything, especially when you get into the more central parts of Canada, the supply chain functions related to agriculture, to fossil fuels, to mining and minerals, that starts to become a really big industry in the central and western part of Canada, where it's moving those natural resources and getting them to market.
Sorry, I had muted myself. Thank you so much for that answer. We have a very specific question for Valerie here, and it's someone wants to know, Valerie, you mentioned being a professional and developing skills in a particular sector, and they want to know how then can an immigrant stay open-minded and receptive of other opportunities in different fields. And I want to get started. I just want to give a quick response, and maybe you can follow it up. I mean, being open-minded doesn't mean you don't have a plan. When you're arriving, I think Valerie has covered a little bit of this previously as well. When you're arriving in a new country, it's a lot of people assume that it's starting from scratch, starting from a different industry might be an easy option, but if you don't have a plan, and you don't have a plan for what you're going to pursue and how you're going to pursue that, it's really difficult. So you need to have a plan A, plan B, and plan C in place, and then that's what being open-minded and being open to other opportunities means. It doesn't mean not having a plan. Val, do you want to take that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you summarized that absolutely beautifully. Open-minded means that you have to open yourself to opportunities. Like, even though if you have a firm plan that you want to become a supply chain professional in the next 3 months, and you're arriving in July and you're expecting that you will land a position in October, don't forget that there's a whole country that is kind of living its own life, and the situation might change, right? The economy might change. It might go up and down. The overall political situation might change. There's a lot of changes that might happen along the way. So be prepared in a sense of, and be open-minded in the sense of, adjust your strategy or the plan based on the reality, right? You might have one plan, and then for some reason which is beyond your control, you have to kind of change your direction in a certain way. Be open-minded, like be open to the situation, the environment, and adjust your plan. Don't be kind of stubborn to the point when you drive yourself into the situation when you don't feel like, when you feel exhausted and you feel like, there is no option B or C. Be ready to, to adjust to the reality, because life is life, right? Yeah, I mean, we plan, but we know it happens. Sometimes you have to adjust and take a different opportunity with the goal that you want to, say, achieve your professional designation in 2 years from now. Take the smaller steps to achieve that. It might happen in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months. But as long as you work towards that with the open mind and you scan for different opportunities, eventually you will achieve that. That's what I meant by being open-minded.
That's a great response. Thank you, Al. In the same lines, I think people who are looking at switching to supply chain they also need to rely on their transferable skills. They may have great work experience and can bring transferable skills to a supply chain industry. What would you identify are the ideal transferable skills that can be used in this industry? Val, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, could you repeat that question, please? I'm just trying to understand what's the core of the question.
Transferable skills that someone not from the supply chain and logistics industry, what transferable skills are essential here? What are some of the skills that can be transferred to supply chain and logistics?
That's an interesting question. It's kind of hard to answer that in a simple way. I mean, there are certain skills that you can transfer from different professions, be it like ability to work with other people, being part of the team, like a soft skills, the hardcore skills, like your math, your ability to work with different software applications. But what matters in Canada is that ability with people and be open-minded in the sense of you will be facing a different situations at your new place with your new employer. So a lot of employers are looking for the skill, and they kind of often mention that unofficially as the Canadian experience. And I was kind of struggling to understand the very beginning what Canadian experience means. I worked in different countries. I kind of knew how to establish myself, but the Canadian experience essentially means you have to be ready to accept the reality that Canada is a country of immigrants, right? There's a lot of people from different walks of life. And what essentially I kind of learned the hard way, what Canadian experience means is that you have to be ready to work in an environment which is called Canada, right? Which is might be different from your home country. And like in my example, in Russia, we don't have a lot of newcomers and immigrants, so everybody speaks the same language. Everybody has the same or similar background. Versus in Canada, you might be working in the office with people from 10 or 15 different countries, and that's what I call a Canadian experience. Be ready for that, and probably this is the biggest lesson that I learned. That's what you have to embrace and keep in mind when you look for a job or when you move to Canada. Just be, ready to accept reality and roll with that. That's what it is. And that's my
and
suggestion.
Just to jump in, there are some transferable skills that have been sort of identified by various sector organizations as being like very helpful in supply chain logistics. For example, Val, I know you have your project management professional certification. Definitely being able to manage projects is one of them. Understanding of financial planning and cost analysis has been identified as pretty important, and forecasting as well. And then just in general, communication skills, being able to work in a team, whether that's being a team leader or being a good team player. And definitely also, as Val mentioned, an understanding, an ability to learn software systems and apply them. IT is definitely becoming increasingly important as more and more things move into e-procurement and e-business. So those are all skills you may have from other industries that you could bring over to help have a successful career in supply chain logistics.
Great. Thank you so much for that information, Chrissy and Val. I think we are out of time now. We're still receiving a few questions. So if you both don't mind, we'll compile some of these questions and send them over to you. And if you could respond to that, then we'll distribute this to our webinar participants.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, this has been very, very informative, and I'm sure many of the professionals will find this useful and can start building this into their plan for arriving in Canada. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the participants as well. I hope you will make use of this information that you received today. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And please get in touch with your employment specialist if you have any specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.